And yes, first of all, I want to apologize for anybody who read it incorrectly. You know, there will be no large aquatic mammals. It's life on purpose, not life on porpoise. Okay? So I'm sorry if you read it wrong, but here we are today, life on purpose. That was for Phil. So life on purpose. When I think of purpose and people that are really living on purpose and not just kind of like a pinball bouncing from one experience to the next, is I think of heroes. So when you think of a hero, what's a hero that you guys think of? Somebody throw one out. Superman. There's a superhero. God's a hero. What are some who? Gandhi's a hero. Why was he a hero?
He showed by example.
There you go. I like that. Show by example. It's like I almost got a plug in here, right? So yeah, we show by example. These are people who are not living through theory. They're living through practice, right? And there's tons of stories of these heroes. There was one hero who had to get kicked out of his tribe and he had to go walk in a desert for 40 days and 40 nights before he found out who he was. You guys know that story? Who was that? There you go. And then there's other stories like there was one time another one about a kid who grew up without knowing his dad. And then later on got a crush on a girl who he found out later on was his sister. And then much later on, he actually got his arm cut off by his own father. Who knows that one? Luke Skywalker, you guys. Did this really happen? So all history, whether it's from way in ancient days or modern times, we're constantly looking at this idea of what a hero is. And heroes are people who live on purpose. So what's your purpose? What are you here for? Because it wasn't an accident. You are the moment that your mom and dad had that chance encounter. If you've ever felt like you're a loser or you don't make it in this world, please keep in mind that you are the winner. You are the one who made it. Okay? So there is no accident to you being here. You are here on purpose. It's just that there's so many other beliefs and static that are a part of our society that have probably taught you away from that idea that you're here on purpose. So as Don was saying, I've been a teacher for a long, long time. I was a preschool teacher way back in the 90s for a couple years, and then I became a college instructor for 17 years. Last week, for 5 days, I was a substitute teacher for middle school kids. And all of my knowledge of biology and chemistry and puberty really helped. Because I knew that I was walking into insanity. Okay.
I'm impressed you still have hair.
Right, yeah. I was ready for it. And so, whether you know what your purpose is or not, and chances are you probably don't, because we don't really think about that. That's not a part of our society. That's not a part of our everyday conversation. We're too busy talking about elephants and asses and masks and syringes. So we don't have enough time to talk about the things that are most important, things that actually have some purpose to them, right? And so maybe you don't know, because when I do a discussion, and I did it with the middle school kids, I do it with college kids, and usually in a group of 20 to 30 people, if one knows what their purpose is, their calling, or what they call your dharma, well, that's the one or two. Most people don't know. It's because they don't think about it. So what's your purpose? Why are you here on earth breathing with the rest of us? And so you might not know what it is. That's okay. Let's go ahead and take a look at something that would be more like a general purpose that all human beings can kind of agree with. That might be, how would you like sustainable happiness? Okay? If you don't know what your calling is, let's start with that. Let's find ways to become sustainably happy. And I'm not talking about, feeling good one day or going out and buying a new car or getting a new lover and a new job, because that does make you happy. What it does is it releases chemicals in your body like dopamine and serotonin and endorphins, and that'll help you feel good. But then when those are gone, or when they're taken away, or after a short period of time when those don't excite you anymore, what's going to make you happy? Well, that's what purpose does. Purpose goes along with passion. It's an authentication process. And so when you have purpose, you can find ways to become sustainably happy. And other than sustainable happiness, well, let's just say that even before that, because that might be too much for some people to think about. Well, wouldn't it be nice just to have confidence in what you do and what you say without having to always second guess yourself? Wouldn't it be nice that when you screw up and you fall on your face, that you don't have to go through that miserable process of shame and guilt that a lot of us go through whenever we screw up? Well, that's a byproduct of not really knowing how to reorientate ourselves. Intrinsically, we have an ability to self-right ourselves. And wouldn't it be great if after every single time you got knocked down, you had the ability to self-right and pick yourself back up to where you're never, ever knocked out? Well, that's what this is going to help bring you to. So, one of the key things that we're not given as we're growing up is the ability to see right from wrong. We might understand what right and wrong is, and we might be told positionally that's right for you and that's wrong for you, but that's where a lot of times people get arrested in their development. They're listening to everything on the outside, and because of that, like we were talking about in the beginning, they don't really get to hear that inner voice. Well, the first, most foundational principle that we have to understand in order to achieve the sustainable happiness, in order to live on purpose, is to understand duality itself. And before we start to look into duality, the up, the down, the left, the right, the happy, the sad, let's look at things like dependence. Because really, the big reason that I'm here is that the world is counting on you. No pressure, but when you look at how this world is today, it's not the people out there that are creating the world, it's the people right here that's creating the world. It's the person to the left of you, it's the person to the right of you that's creating this world. They're creating this world with their thoughts, with their actions, with their words. We know this story until it begins habits, and until that's the way that we are. And so we need to take a real good look at interdependence, independence, and understand what those are, because if we don't really understand our own independence and where we fit in with the rest of the world, we're going to fall into the abomination called codependence. Okay? And I'm one of those kind of people that I'm in this field because I love people. And I'm in this field because I can't stand people. It's like I figured this is something that I can do because of the fact that I don't want a world, I don't choose to be in a world that is codependent. The best description, the best visualization that you can think of a bunch of people that are dependent or codependent is that if you tie two birds together, though they have four wings, they cannot fly. Okay? So we have to be free. We have to be individual. We have to know who we are away from everyone else. And we also need to know how we fit in the world in way of relationship. Relationship is what it's all about. As a matter of fact, the whole world is because of these two primordial concepts of independence and interdependence. They're kind of the bookends of what exists. They're the yin and the yang, right? They are the full scope of duality. Either we are a part of something and we're unified, like John Lennon and Bob Marley and Jesus Christ talk about. We're all one, which is that interdependence, and we'll talk a little more about that. Or we are our singular individual self, the independence. And it's a really, really neat way that this works, because as you guys are aware, you're gods and goddesses sitting here, right? You are spiritual beings in a physical body, right? You're not a physical body with a spirit. You are divinity sitting here, right? And so understanding how divine we are, we can start to kind of unpack this concept of duality and start to use it as a tool and a skill. It's really, really important. Because of the fact that it is this two-scope thing, we can basically look at duality as being a tool, both in a way that is reductive. If you know what's right and wrong, you're going to be able to make choices for yourself, right? So in one way, that's what duality is. Out of everything you can pick, you know what you will have in your life because you love it and it's enjoyable and it's great and it makes you feel happy. And you also know what you won't have in your life because it sucks, right? It doesn't feel good. It exhausts you. You find no pleasure in it. So this is your will haves and your won't haves. The way that this system is developed is initially we get everything in our first chakra, and that's our root chakra, where we're downloaded with all of this knowledge from our culture, our tribe, right? And always keep in mind, as we've talked about before, culture is the same as like a culture of bacteria, right? In so many ways. And culture itself is just a cult you are on earth level. If you ever take that word culture apart, right? It's just another cult, right? So in any which way, this culture that we're all kind of sitting and stewing in has taught us a lot of things. And that's what we gain and cultivate in that first chakra. But then from that first chakra, we bring it up into our second chakra, which is all about relationship. All about how we connect with one another. And in that process, what we do is we take everything that we've learned from our family, our tribe, and then we check it out. We play with it. As a matter of fact, that's what we're doing here on planet Earth, is we're just playing. This is a big, big sandbox, a cosmic sandbox. And the way it really works is we are one unified force. I like Star Trek, so I like to think that what we are is we are this entity that is etheric. So we cannot, by what we are at that state, experience anything. We can't experience happiness. We can't experience greed. We can't experience sadness. None of that can be experienced because we're too etheric, right? But then what happens is we decide together, well, let's go down on this little plane, this little planet, because we are ETs, right? So we go down to a planet of ETs, right? So we're on this planet now, and we make a choice, and this is where the love comes in, is this choice is we decide to come in together into these teeny tiny mortal bodies that have all of that divine power of co-creativity, but it's in a really small bottle. So it's contained. It's all there. Just like if you were to take a drop of the ocean, everything that's in that ocean is in that drop of water. You are, as Carl Sagan has spoken of, you are the star stuff, right? So start acting like it. You are gods and goddesses. You are co-creators. And if you don't understand your own will haves and won't haves through that process of cultivation, well, then it's going to be used against you. Okay, so duality in one part, and we're going to talk here in a minute of how it's used against you, because of course it's used against you in two ways. But the other way that we use duality is not only in the reductive, but we also use it in the expansive. We use it exponentially. Because when you understand what is up and what is down, you can start to experience that everything is a spectrum. Everything from the top of the mountain down to the valley is a spectrum of up and a spectrum of down. This is where mastery comes into play, because now you're not restricted by just up and just down. You've got this whole spectrum to play with. And so in that way, you don't come to a decision and say, do I do this or do I do that? You say, these are the resources I have available to me. What can I co-create with this? It's not any sort of a restriction. You're never forced into any idea. There's never any sort of control, because that's what real co-creation is. It's free. And so duality, again, can either be used to help you go to A or B. It can be very reductive, and that's great. Or it can actually help you unpack and figure out many, many more options. Because it goes in either way. It's a spiral, right? You can either bring it down to the smallest microscopic idea of what your problem is, or you can expand that out to a million possibilities. And so we have to become skillful in this, because if we're not, this same concept can be used against us, both from external forces and, of course, also from internal forces. So, outside, there are no real attacks. Okay, now of course I'm not talking about like a physical attack, that's one thing. But if somebody's being mean to you, or if you're upset about how politics are, or anything like that, that's not the real bad guy, okay? But because of the fact that we've been forced to believe that the world is an outside-inside process, we believe it. And so we buy into fear, and we buy into shame, and we buy into guilt. And the way this happens is that if you don't know how to use the yin and the yang as a skill and a tool, then they're going to use it against you to separate. Now, who's heard, what is the only affliction, you spiritual beings, you? You guys ever heard that one? No. Separation. There you go. Thanks, Gandalf. Separation is the only affliction. Now let's unpack that, because if we are all one, and then we think that we're separate, that person's wrong and I'm right, you see where the problem comes into play? Right there. When you think that you're right and they're wrong, that's separation, that creates affliction. And you can see that in anywhere. They use it against you in all kinds of nefarious ways if you're not aware, because what they can do is on TV and on the radio, they'll tell you exactly how to feel. Against your own best divinity, they can take away all your co-creation ability, because they'll tell you that you're ugly, that you need to buy all this makeup, and that you need to get your facelift. And they'll tell you that you need to buy more things even when you have everything that you need.
Right?
Amen.
So mind your wants, because someone wants your mind, right? I can't take credit for that. That's George Clinton. And you guys will have to look up who that is. Anybody know George Clinton? Probably not. You know George Clinton?
Heard of him. Don't know him.
Parliament Funkadelic.
Not my genre so much, but yeah. I've heard of him.
Not quite Buddha, but yeah, mind your wants, because someone wants your mind. So these nefarious elements, which are just a part of the play, okay? Like Shakespeare said, we are all actors and actresses, and the world is a play, right? The stage, right? And so they're going to be able to use this process of separation, and you've been fed into it your whole life. As I've talked about in the past, they use separation in the schoolyards with the your mama jokes. It's the first way how to separate yourself. And then they teach you all about competition. Sports is the next way to separate yourself. and then the politics, which you guys have all heard me talk about.
Politics.
The word politics is just a bunch of blood-sucking parasites. See that, right? Politics, okay? And in theology, they bring you to this state that actually has you believing that your God is better than another God, right? All along talking about how we're all one. Okay? So there's a design that is going on. There is a design to grab your attention. There is a design that has you keeping up with the Joneses.
Yeah, we didn't have much.
It's all reductive. It's all an expression of teaching you how to be attracted by shiny objects outside of yourself. Now, I don't know who this force is. It really doesn't matter. It's, it's the Sith. It's whatever you want to call it, Huh?
The ego.
The ego. Well, and the ego, we'll talk about the ego here in a second if we have time. Because I would actually say the ego is just a tool as well. It's a barometer. It really helps us recognize where we're at in a situation. But they teach us that we should go away from the ego, right? As a little side note, I actually think that Jesus Christ was actually the most egotistical person, but his was the refinement of the ego. Because you see, at first what our ego does is says, these are my roots. The ego first of all says, well, this is the way I've always done it. This is the way that I was raised. That's where ignorance and bigotry is in that first chakra. And then the ego moves through and the ego says, this is mine and this is yours. And I'm going to make sure I take care of mine and you take care of yours. And then when we cultivate that in the third chakra, which is confirmation, that's willpower. That's our will haves and our won't haves. And you see, we've cultivated that genuinely because we've taken what we were taught, we've tested it out for ourselves in our second chakra, and now in our third chakra, where fire is, that's our willpower, our will haves and won't haves. We know where we sit in way of duality. This is what I choose. It's not what I want anymore. The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want, right? So what we're going to do is we're going to mature this idea of the ego into choice. Because what you can do with that is once you take that ego in the third chakra and we move it up into the fourth chakra, well, this is the language of Christ, that Christ consciousness. With that Christ consciousness, what the ego does is it says it is so important, not just about what I have, but what everybody around me has. So, if there's not enough fish or loaves, let me just manifest it. Oh, you just got water and you need some wine?
No problem.
Let me manifest it. That's what that movement of the ego can do if we bring that up into the fourth chakra, because we find a way. We understand how important that interdependence is. That's where we catch up. And that's why it's positioned right where it is. Fourth chakra. It's right in between heaven and earth, right? That's the key right there. Is that when you set your ego free, when you stop looking at the world from an outside-in approach, and you start going from an inside-out approach, you start to look for what is it that we need, what resources do I create, and let me just manifest it. So the ego is a great tool. It's just that most people, their development is arrested in the first, second, or third stage. So duality is one of the most important foundational skills and tools that we have at getting through this spiritual maturity. So let's explore a few areas of duality while we're here. First of all,